And we're live. What's up, everybody? Thank you for joining. There's definitely reason to celebrate. Thousands have been reunited with their loved ones. That's reason to celebrate. We saw a small cessation of violence, but we should remain cautiously optimistic at best. So far, the ceasefire has been violated by both sides in different ways. Hamas is finding it difficult to return all the bodies, which makes sense because a lot of the bodies are buried under rubble, right? So part of the ceasefire agreement is that they're going to return the dead bodies in some schedule. They're not able to find them all. In response to them not returning the dead bodies according to schedule, Israel closed down the Rafah crossing and is still conducting airstrikes in Gaza. So definitely some reason to celebrate, but it's not like we're out of the woods. We're not. Also, Hamas is still in power, which will give Israel motivation and justification internally to continue aggression once the opportunity arises. So Israel will look for any opportunity to continue if they can. What's unclear is what the international guarantees are here, right? Because it seems like Trump somehow got both sides to make a pretty major concession. And the concession that Hamas made was to return hostages on day one and not require Israel to do a full withdrawal. And the concession Israel perhaps made, we don't know if they for sure made it, was that Hamas very well may stay in power. So I don't know what he promised each side, how he sold it to each side, but it seems like a concession was made. We have a comment from Israel Uncovered saying, what a silly question, Dor. You know Hamas hasn't handed back our deceased. Come on, Achi, let's be real. No. I'm being real. Hamas has handed back deceased, but reported that they're missing, I think, 4 bodies. Is that not realistic that with all the rubble, all the destruction in Gaza, that they just can't find everybody? What interest do they have to not return deceased? If they return the living, what interest do they have to not hand back deceased? It's plausible that they can't find everybody. Makes sense. And then Israel is using this as an opportunity to continue aggression. So yeah, bro, let's be real. It's not the propaganda runs so deep. Let's just talk about that, because there's been a few instances of propaganda this week. It's rough. It's rough. We have a lot of we need to completely transform our institutions, that people can't be just so misinformed so confidently like we're seeing. And we just need our people meaning Israelis, Palestinians, and people all over the world, to just be deprogrammed and just learn how to better understand what's true and what's not true when there's a failure of institutions. But ideally, we don't need to do all this research on our own to get to the bottom of things, because we have reliable institutions, but that's simply not the case. So what we're seeing right now is one such example, when there's a comment saying, oh, Hamas violated the ceasefire, implying it's somehow malicious, like they're doing this to fuck with Israel, when the most plausible explanation, and their stated explanation, is we just can't find bodies. And then another one, this one was crazy, was there's no female hostages living. Hamas killed all the female hostages. The reason they did that was because they were raped and they didn't want them to talk. That's literally the narrative. Not knowing at all that the female hostages were released in prior ceasefire agreements. But multiple people shared this. It got tens of thousands of retweets and likes. A complete bullshit misinformation, implying something completely false. So yeah, time to wake up and start to see the truth for what it is. And just because some pro-Israel or pro-Palestine propagandists say something online that fits your narrative doesn't mean it's true. In fact, most likely it's not true, because propagandists are actually lying for a living. So how about that? Bloodland 99, good to see you here. Now, we did just get reports. This is from Times of Israel. This is interesting. Father to free hostage reveals he received letter from son 2 months ago via Red Cross. Whoa. They actually let him. Ilan Gilbert Dalal, whose son Guy was released from captivity in Gaza yesterday, says that he can now reveal he received a letter from his son 2 months ago via the Red Cross. He wrote how much he misses us and thoughts of us strengthened him in captivity. Till the letter he wrote, he only realized his brother Gal had survived the October 7th massacre when he recently watched television in Gaza and saw him being interviewed. Huh. That's crazy that Hamas would just let them send a letter like that, right? That doesn't make sense, but okay. Reported 20 minutes ago, Hamas informed mediators it will release 4 hostages' bodies at 10 p.m., official says. So it looks like the release is going on as usual. Hopefully these violations of ceasefires don't spiral out of control. Hopefully. And again, it's not to those joining Twitter Spaces, welcome. I'm streaming this as well, so it's midstream, but it's good to have you here. If you want, you're welcome to hop on stage. It's not a large part of the Israeli public, as far as they're concerned. It's like, this is over. We got the hostages back. What happens next? If Israel continues, if they don't, less my concern. I think a lot of people have that perspective in Israel. Obviously, there's differing opinions. Some want Israel to continue aggression. As long as Hamas is in power, they won't be satisfied. But us getting the hostages back is really enough for us to breathe a sigh of relief. It's over for now. But if we zoom out, it's far from over. Even if there's a long-term ceasefire in Gaza, we still have an unsustainable, immoral status quo. We still have a status quo that has one government controlling the people of another through military rule. We don't have a clear vision for what happens next in Gaza. I know there's parties working on it, but what about the West Bank? What's the vision for the West Bank? How do we create a just solution there? So we're not out of the woods. We have reason to celebrate, but no, we're not yet out of the woods. We got our work cut out for us. If anybody here on Twitter wants to hop on, you're welcome to do so. Those here on Discord, in 1 hour from now, 8:30 p.m. Jerusalem time, 1:30 p.m. EST, we're going to move this over to Discord. So those on Discord, you can just listen for now, but if you want to talk, that'll be through Twitter Spaces. And those on stream, welcome. Welcome. We're adding some complexity to this, having these multiple different streaming platforms, but it's cool. I feel like we're moving up in the world. Let's see what else we got. Yeah, like another report is saying Witkoff and Kushner met directly with Hamas leaders last week to seal the deal. So you need to think, what does this mean? Did Hamas sealing the deal, did they say we're going to step down from power? Probably not. It seems like there was a concession made there, right? There had to have been some promise that maybe they do joint control with the PA and some Arab nations. Unclear. But to get Israel to... unless Israel just picks it up again, right? But it really does seem like Trump successfully got both sides to make a major concession. So credit where credit's due to our wannabe authoritarian Cheeto commander-in-chief. Credit where credit's due, my guy. But I guess we'll see. He needs this for his Nobel Prize, right? If he has any hope for getting a Nobel Prize, he needs the ceasefire to last. But I don't think this is on its own deserving of a Nobel Prize. If he actually finds a progresses a just and lasting solution to Israel-Palestine, okay, definitely deserves a Nobel Prize. But for simply reining in your proxy Israel, it's true Biden didn't do it, but I don't know if this is Nobel Prize worthy. It's also he's such a polarizing figure. I don't think that they're going to give it to him. It would be too, even if he deserves it, they won't give it to him. He'd need to do something major. But I guess we'll see. Those joining here on the Twitter space, welcome. If you want to hop on, just raise your hand. We'll bring you on. Floodland, what emoji is that? If you're still here, that is it's a cute little guy you just shared with me. You got to tell me I've never seen that emoji in my life. You do need to think, I mean, let's stray off topic real quick. Unless someone on Discord wants to hop on. But just straying off topic real quick. Ahmed, good to see you here. What an evolution of text-based communication has been created through the invention of emojis. How much more emotion we can express through these emojis. Kind of cool. I feel like it's a societal advancement that we just accepted, but didn't really like outright recognize that it happened. So shout out to emoji culture, which definitely helps because you can't tell sarcasm or all sorts of other stuff via text. So there's a lot of missing context that emojis fill in the gap. ITS says, Adar, why didn't you stream when the hostages were released? What was that? Sunday? I was completely offline Sunday. I did a digital detox. I isolated myself in nature for the day. So I was not available, but I would have liked to. It's just I already had that planned as a day I'm taking myself, and I need those days. This lifestyle, social media and whatnot, just drains dopamine. I definitely feel how it affects me when I spend too much time online. It affects my mood, my energy levels, my focus. So I try to give myself, I don't really do it enough, honestly. I'd say once a quarter I do this isolation to do call it a digital detox or dopamine reset, but I should do it more often. And if I seem a little more energized today, a little more pep in my step, well, that's why. I also, I didn't make it over to Tel Aviv for the ceremony. Honestly, I missed out on a bunch. I feel bad about it. It's something it's something I'm trying to tell myself. I don't want to feel like I need to be online for anything. Like, as much as I enjoy this content or enjoy this work because I feel like it's having a positive impact and I enjoy doing these live streams, the pressure to need to constantly do content when something happens it's just not a pressure I want. I want to be fully free. And when I'm available, I hop on to do it. So on one hand, ITS, sorry I couldn't have been there on those days, but I feel strongly about me being able to check out when I feel it's important. Anyways, I see we got the space is starting to fill up. Welcome, everybody. So this is just open dialogue, Israel-Palestine. Anyone can hop on. All views are welcome. That doesn't mean your views won't go unchallenged, but we welcome all views. Just keep it respectful, no personal attacks. And I guess no hate. We're not going to do any group hate. We're going to refrain from that. But whether you're a supporter of Hamas or a Kahanist, I don't care. Come on, let's share your thoughts. Let's hear what's going on. Ahmed is saying, well, did Hamas fulfill their side of the deal in Israel? And there's always some kind of nonsense problem, like always. So we opened the stream with this conversation. Hamas did not return the deceased hostages in the timeline they committed to. The most plausible explanation for why they didn't do this is they just couldn't find all the deceased hostages. So Israel then took that as an opportunity to continue aggression and close the Rafah crossing, or limit aid coming in from Rafah, which is probably a sign that Israel is hungry to restart things if the opportunity arises. So our work is not over yet. And our work is not over until, from the river to the sea, all the people are free, right? Until there's a just solution for all the people living between the river and the sea, we got our work cut out for us. So we're on it. We're on it. Imagination C says no side has fully filled their side of the deal. Correct. But for different reasons, you know. These aren't equal violations of the deal. Jonathan Buckenmeyer, why would Hamas stop following their prophet's example as advised in the Quran? Have you read their charter? Yeah, I read their charter and I've done a live stream reviewing their charter. Why would the UAE normalize ties with Israel? Why would Bahrain and Morocco do that? Why would the president of Indonesia, the most populous Muslim country in the world, say we need peace with Israel? Why? Are they just not Muslim anymore? No, the reality is there's countless interpretations of every religion, and generally there's more important, more relevant factors that contribute to how we see the world and why we believe the things we believe, why we act the way we act. Generally, religion is essentially a conduit, a way to express or justify or support more relevant factors in our life. So Islam is not the reason why there's an Israel-Palestine conflict. There's an Israel-Palestine conflict because it's an ethnic conflict, two different populations fighting over the same piece of land, where the more powerful side has systematically oppressed the weaker side. That leads to resistance, that leads to violence. And it's why you have Christian Palestinians who've engaged in violent resistance, and why you have Muslim Israelis who serve in the IDF. The obsession with religion, it's simply looking for a simple excuse to why the problem exists. If you want to know why the problem exists, there's a very real human dynamic where one population or one government controls the population of another without giving them sovereignty nor equality. And then when they respond to that oppressive system, we say, oh, it's just Islam. No, it's not just Islam. All throughout history, oppressed people have responded violently to their oppressor. It's pretty consistent throughout history. So whatever you believe about Hamas and their perspective can change if you change the situation on the ground. We have countless examples of terror organizations who have had maximalist demands, reform, and change their demands, make major concessions through negotiation. In fact, we have a great data point. The PLO used to be more extreme than Hamas. We've now had security cooperation with the PA, which once was the PLO, for decades. How did that happen? Negotiation. We did it. Now, we didn't build on that. We didn't reward the PA for cooperation. We just expanded territories. In fact, we rewarded Hamas for their violence by withdrawing from Gaza, and then expanded in the West Bank when we had a partner there that was cooperating with us. So if we want to weaken radical elements in Palestinian society, reward moderation. Show that cooperation, moderation leads to sovereignty or equality, and then you start to incentivize moderate actions and behavior. It's all within the realm of possible, my people. Evman, I see you want to raise your hand. So Evman, for the next 45 minutes, this is going to be primarily Twitter Space. So if you want to come speak, you need to do it through Twitter Space. If not, just wait, and then we'll bring you on Discord afterwards. ITS says, but Hamas are religious fanatics. Yeah. I mean, they're religious. Cool. I have cousins who are religious fanatics. Most of them, in fact. Can their views change if the situation on the ground changes? 100%. In fact, I change their minds through conversations. So that's just not history. In fact, if you believe that Hamas cannot reform as an organization, you're essentially saying they are the first organization in the history of the world that did not reform over time. Any organization that existed long enough has changed. What makes Hamas, what's this belief that they're entirely unique and that no matter what, they will always hold the same exact views they hold today? What organization has been like that? What government has been like that? What political party has been like that? None. There's never been one in the history of the world. The only constant is change. The organizations are made of people. People change. People die and they're replaced by new people. So this is just a fundamental truth that we need to continue to live by. And by accepting this, it's empowering, right? The reason I constantly push this narrative is because, hold on, Falaha, we're bringing you on. We'll let you speak in a moment. But the reason I push this narrative is because I want us to be empowered to understand that we have changes in our hands. We could actually change the situation. But when we believe that it's just all a result of Islam, we're disempowered. It leaves us without the tools to do anything. We just need to wait for it. What can we do if it's just Islam? So we just need to keep killing Muslims? Is that the solution? So this message that I'm stuck on, I repeat it often for a reason, because I want us to understand that the power for change is in our hands. And I'm not going to allow us to continue to disempower ourselves by just scapegoating a religion. It's bullshit. And in fact, people have been doing that for Jews for millennia. They have a problem. Oh, it must be the Jew. They can't look at issues within their society. They just need to scapegoat someone. Many are doing the same thing here with Islam. There's a deeper issue. Anyways, we're going to bring on Evan. I see you. You got to actually, hold on, if I can invite you on. You need to actually request to speak. Here, I invited you to speak. Cool. With that, Fala, I'll just call you Fala if that's cool. Floor is yours. It's a good question, and I think in the simplest terms, I would just say land dispute. It's fighting over limited resources, which in this instance is primarily land. It's two ethnic groups that have a strong desire have a strong national aspiration over the same piece of land. If Palestinians were all atheists or if they were all Christian, the conflict wouldn't solve tomorrow. The only religion that they would be that perhaps may solve it is if they were all Jewish, right? That would change the dynamic completely. But so we could see how, to some extent, religion interacts with the conflict. And it's not that if you happen to be, if you're a Palestinian Muslim and you're an extremist, it's very easy to justify your extremist beliefs by finding some line in the Quran that help you justify it. So it's not that there's no, and by the way, I have Jewish family that do the same thing with the Torah, how they find lines in the Torah, whether it's Amalek or some other lines, and they use that to justify their extremism. So you could see how religion plays into it, but at the end of the day, we're talking about a land dispute. It's two different ethnic groups with national aspirations over the same land. Does that answer your question?
Enterprise or that project has never comprehensively addressed that fundamental problem.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think we're still. I mean, it's never been addressed correctly. I agree. There's been an attempt to address it with maintaining this immoral and unsustainable status quo, but there's never been a true sustained effort to find a lasting and just solution to the conflict. An attempt here, an attempt there, which, by the way, these attempts are then used. They're used as, right. If you look at the pro-Israel narrative, it's very much we continuously try for peace and it's continuously rejected. And they're talking about a few high-level negotiations that broke down quickly and were never sustained, and that's definitely something, but it's not what's needed to actually solve something so deep-rooted, right? It's not just let's do negotiate. So let me back up a little bit. If we look at the history, Israel-Palestine is quite unique, but if we look at the history of similar dynamics where you have one group coming and displacing another group and taking their land, that's happened hundreds, perhaps thousands of times throughout history. And this is always responded to with violence. And it's not like the population that gets their land taken from them are just quick to accept this new status. Yeah, you know what? You can have it. So our negotiations have always been, hey guys, we'll give you 30% of the land. Oh, you don't accept it? Well, then we'll just continue to expand and maintain this status quo, right? That's how it's been. In Israeli society, in our society, we have this idea that Palestinian rejection is hard to understand, that it's extreme, that it's unjust of them to do, that they're at fault for rejection, like all this stuff. But rejection is what should be expected in that situation. Them rejecting, at the very least, rejecting partition makes sense that they would reject partition. And the work required to actually get Palestinians to agree to some solution is a lot more work than what's actually been put in up until now. So yeah, we got that work to do, and it's not like progress hasn't made. I mean, the PLO recognized Israel's right to exist in '93. You know, we've had security cooperations with them for decades, so progress has been made, but it's not. We haven't had the sustained effort. Continue effort. A negotiation breaks down. All good. We get back to the table, and continue to negotiate. And we don't take failures of negotiations as an excuse to expand territory. And we do everything we do to reduce the oppressive force that the IDF currently plays for Palestinians in the West Bank. All right, there's just so much we could do while moving towards peace, but we maintain a status quo that is inherently oppressive and radicalizing. And then it's much harder. The more you oppress a population, the harder it is to then convince them to accept your existence on their land. It comes through peace building. It comes through reconciliation. It comes through building shared institutions. There's a process we need to go through. Anyways, with that, we'll give it over to Mikey, and then we'll give it over to Chilleray.
Oh no, hi. I'm just listening for a bit until I give my I'm just listening right now until I want to speak.
Okay,
So
sure,
thank you
no problem.
because I just joined. So
Sure, sure. Chillery, all you.
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, loud and clear.
Um, yeah, no, I mean, I just kind of wanted to say, like, yeah, I agree. Like, it's expected for, the partition deals to be rejected. Because, like, at the end of the day, like, the Palestinians don't want their land to be partitioned in the first place. So, yeah, like, the argument that, like, oh, the 67 partition was, like, rejected or whatever, it's just like, to me, like, yeah, like it makes complete sense. And like on top of that, like these partition deals were never going to be sustained regardless, right? Like, I mean, Israel has a history of like disregarding international law. So even if the UN partition of 67 were to happen, and let's just say in an alternate universe it was accepted, I don't see a reality where the borders would have been respected regardless, right? Like currently Israel is occupying Golan Heights, which is Syrian territory, but it's administered and governed under, kind of Israeli governance, which, makes no sense. That's like literally like America just taking over, I don't know, Mexico and then govern it, which actually did happen. But like, yeah, imagine if the U.S. just like went took over like a portion of Mexico and was like, yeah, well, this is Mexican territory, but sucks to suck, we're still going to govern it. And so I don't really even see a future, or like I don't see an alternate reality where even if the 67 partition was accepted, that Israel would have respected the borders in the first place. Um,
Yeah,
but yeah, I mean
are
that's
you
kind
talking
of
about
that's
you're
kind of
talking
my
about
position.
47 though partition, right? Not 67.
No, I'm talking about this. Well, yeah, 47 partition, but the 67 UN plan, where Israelis are like, oh, well, we gave majority of the land to the Palestinians, but they didn't accept it. Where it was like, I think like 59% went to Palestine and the rest was Israel.
No, that's 47. No, am I,
Well, I mean,
am I completely
47 is
messed up?
when.
Am I completely messed up on my history here? I'm pretty sure the partition plan is 1947. 67 was the Six-Day War when we took Jerusalem and East Jerusalem and the West Bank and Sinai.
Yeah, no, I'm thinking of more so like I think it's called like the Alon plan or something. So in 67, it was one of the UN plans to divide Israel and Palestine into two states. I mean, I was just calling it the partition plan, but I think the official name is the Alon plan.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
okay,
so after
okay,
the Six-Day War, yeah, there was like a partition, like a dividing by the UN,
right.
a proposed division by the UN. And like a lot of Israelis will be like, oh well, during that Alon plan, we actually gave more land to Palestinians than what we had. I think the division was like 59% Palestine, and then 41% Israel. And they're like, oh, even when we gave that majority land to Palestinians, they still declined it. But if you can't expect people to like who already live on a land to be happy with any type of partition, even if it was like 99% and 1%. Like it's still something that I wouldn't expect anyone to agree with in the first place.
Yep, correct. It's and look, it's not. We do see that there is buy-in, right? It's not that there's no support for two states in Palestinian society. I mean, during Oslo, it was over 50%. So there actually has been a lot of progress, but this whole idea that we're going to take, this land is ours. You could have that piece of it. If you don't accept it, we'll take more. And that process for a century now, it's just, that's how we end up where we currently are. It's not a path towards peace. Um, I want to read. I want to address. This is streaming to YouTube as well, by the way, guys. So there's comments coming in, but I want to read a comment. Milo, good to see you here. Milo goes, well, there's an obsession with religion and obsession with oppressor-oppressed narrative. Identifying as oppressed victim will never do any good to that side, even if it was the case. So I agree with you to an extent. We've already had this conversation offline, but I think it's important to provide some context and nuance to oppressor versus oppressed narratives, because you can't entirely avoid it. if you want to exist in reality, right? This idea that we can solve the conflict, find a just solution without acknowledging reality, to me is, is not living in reality. So I think it's important to understand the dynamic between the IDF and Palestinians and how that dynamic is a force of radicalization. I think that's essential to understand, because if you don't understand that, why would you find any motivation to try to change that dynamic? So if you're arguing against that, I strongly disagree. If you're saying that the woke segment of the left and how they have a hyperfixation on oppressor versus oppressed and how that's unhealthy, I would agree with that. Let me give you an example. And if anybody listening on any of the platforms disagrees, feel free to hop on and share your thoughts. But a few months ago, we did some content in the West Bank. We brought Israelis and Palestinians for conversations. And one of them was between Palestinian activist Noor Awad and Joseph Cohen from the Israel Advocacy Network. And one of the viewers said, I can't watch an oppressor speak to the oppressed. It's an unfair power dynamic. It doesn't allow the Palestinian to express himself fully. Granted, we were in the Palestinian space. He invited us to his space. We're surrounded by his people. It's true that systemically, him being a Palestinian, so for example, had he done something to Joseph could report that and Noor would be in jail. If the reverse happened, there would be no recourse. So in that instance, there's a very real power dynamic that needs to be acknowledged. But two humans sitting in a room, good faith, having a conversation, that power dynamic breaks down entirely. That's not there. I agree completely. There shouldn't be an emphasis on who's from the more powerful side. You have two human beings sitting face to face and having a conversation. So that's where this obsession with power dynamics, in my opinion, goes astray. And additionally, I do think if your whole life you're taught that you're oppressed, you're disempowered. And I think that people who are oppressed actually need to be empowered the most, because it will help them succeed in life. So we need to strike the balance between acknowledging oppression and what that means and how to change that, but also empower individuals that are otherwise oppressed. Anyone want to hop in or comment? No? Okay. If no, Evan, I see you said you want to speak, but I don't see you here on stage. Oh, Evan.
Sorry, I was listening. I would comment, but I'm gonna keep listening. I'm still trying to listen to figure out what's going on.
You could tune in, Mikey. You could share your thoughts. What's on your mind?
So what's the general consensus here with everyone who's here? Are we upset? Are we happy? Like, I'm trying to figure out what's going on. Like,
Oh, well, I can't speak for everybody.
This is open dialogue.
Yeah. I mean, open dialogue. So you're free to share your mind, but I can't speak for everyone here. What I started this space with is that we should celebrate the fact that thousands of loved ones have been reunited, but that we're not out of the woods, because the ceasefire very well may not hold up. It's already been violated. And then you still have
violated by who?
Well, by both. It was violated initially by Hamas. Hamas.
I'm not like being like mean, but like, how do you mean violated by what? Like who?
Yeah,
Israel is already violating the ceasefire?
Yeah, but both sides have violated it. So Hamas wasn't able to return all the dead bodies. They are not able to find them.
Yeah, of course. But also, I agree. I know that situation. But also, Hamas is literally shooting people in the street right now. Wait. Fucking Palestine.
Wait, Mikey, hold on. For sure, and that's horrific. That honestly should have been part of the ceasefire to protect the people of Gaza and say you cannot execute collaborators. That should have been. It's not, but that's not and we could talk about that, because I think the world should know that they're doing that. But that wasn't the violation. The violation was that they they can't find all the dead bodies, so they didn't return them according to schedule. And then Israel limited aid going into Rafah, crossing the Rafah crossing, and also have continued airstrikes. So they're both violations, but very different in nature, but yeah.
Okay, yeah, but still, I mean, like, aid is still going in. Aid is still has been going in for a very long time. I mean, you can't deny that. Okay, I think someone wants to speak. Coach?
Aid's been aid's been going in, but there's been a non-functioning supply chain and not enough aid.
But that's nonsense. I mean, the main fact is we all know who's disrupting the aid channel. I mean, it's not. I mean,
no, we don't. I know that there's propagandists. I mean, you could say the claim you heard. I'm going to tell you a counterclaim. This whole idea that Hamas has been disrupting the aid process is complete bullshit if you actually look into it. But you can make the argument.
No, but I'd like you to continue and tell me why that's false.
Well, Israel.
I welcome that argument.
Israel themselves said they actually don't have any evidence of Hamas systematically stealing and selling aid. The UN also looked in it and didn't find any evidence of this happening systematically. What happened was we saw a significant amount of the aid was being robbed by armed gangs, but there's a lot of armed gangs in Gaza, a lot, including some that are being supported and armed by Israel. Hold my word with the being armed by Israel. They're being supported by Israel. There's literally clans that are working with Israel. So we did see a lot getting looted, but we saw this video of armed men on a truck driving aid. We could conclude with a high degree of certainty that that's not Hamas, because then Israel would blow up the truck. Why wouldn't Israel take an opportunity to kill some Hamas members on a truck if they could? So there was just. There was very little malnutrition in Gaza until Israel stopped aid from going in for nearly 3 months. And then when they started letting aid in, they were letting in 0.6 meals per person per day with non-functioning supply.
But I know, but where are you getting this information from? From the PLO or like the Palestinian Authority? I mean,
no.
The fact that you're saying these absolute like 0.0, I mean, come on, that's absolutely ridiculous. That's not true.
Wait.
Absolutely false. There's no way that makes sense. Go ahead,
Mikey. You're saying the 0.6, the 0.6 meals per person? Is that what you're referring to?
Absolutely. Absolutely, 100% that's false.
Okay.
100% that's false. Whatever kind of thing you think that's absolutely false. These people are eating fine. What are you talking about?
Wait. Hold on.
Where are you getting this information from?
I'm gonna tell you. This is the 0.6 meals per person per day is Gaza Humanitarian Foundation data. They released this publicly. I'm literally relying on them. Who should I rely on to know how many meals have been distributed, if not them?
That's the question, isn't it? Who should you rely on? That's the point. I'm not lying. I mean, that's. What do you mean?
Point. How's that the point? You came with a false assumption about something. I explained to you using data why you're wrong. You then accused my source of being the PLO. I explained that the source is actually the GHF. And now you're
not the PLO, the Palestinian Authority, not the PLO.
Well, okay, PLO, it doesn't really matter. Why would they be the source for what's happening in Gaza?
Yeah, exactly. They're all terrorists, so it doesn't matter. You're right.
Okay. Anyways, we're gonna move on to. Thanks for sharing your thoughts, Mikey. We're gonna move on to. I can't read Arabic, but Esbitter, who has his hand raised.
Thank you. It's supposed to be spider, but like pronounced in an Arabic accent. So spider.
Merhaba.
Thank you. So I don't know why were you recommended to me. Like this is the first time that I hear you, and it's interesting always to speak to like the so-called left Israeli. I was the second to the space. None of my followers or none of the people that I follow were on the space. So it was weird. Just randomly your space was there up in my space thing. But I'm glad. So the question that I came up for, and I speak to Israelis quite regularly, I would say not recently, but like at the beginning I used to speak to them regularly to just understand, because as an Arab there is like this disconnect with Israelis. We don't speak to you. We don't understand the public. I'm not talking about like the leaders and whatnot. So say that, and I'm not sure if you believe it's true or not, but say that the international institutions in a year to 5 years rule out that Israel has committed a genocide in Gaza. And I believe that one of the strongest arguments for the existence of the State of Israel is to prevent the genocide of the Jews. That is the strongest argument that I can grant why Israel needs to exist. How would you then reconcile like a state that was created to prevent a genocide that commits a genocide?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think that the Israeli perspective on this is going to be there's no genocide in Gaza, but let's just work under the assumption that there is. The perspective would still be, if we need to kill others to protect ourselves, it's still worth doing. So Israel is to protect us, the Jewish people. If somebody is trying to kill us and our response happens to be what people describe as genocide, well, then we're willing to do that. That's the perspective generally that you'll hear in Israeli society. And supporters of Israel, it's generally looking more at the big picture. It's whatever human rights violations there are, however many people are killed, Israel needs to exist more than Palestine needs to exist. So I'm going to support Israel over Palestine. And if there's violation of human rights, that's no big deal compared to the big picture of Israel existing or not. I think that's how, if I'm to steelman the Israeli perspective, which is my entire family, that's how they see things.
Would you say that they realize that this is a form of racial supremacy?
Racial supremacy.
Or ethnic supremacy?
You know what? I have a feeling a fair bit would actually concede that point. They would concede it and say, yeah, that that's what we need to have a Jewish state. The same way there's Muslim states that have some Muslim supremacist concept. I think that would generally be the response. So yeah, they would acknowledge it. But they would see that as justified. So something that to put ourselves in the minds of Israelis, most of the actions the government takes is perceived as for security. Yeah, there's some drive connected to religious ideology, but the unifying factor that connects most Israelis anywhere from the left to the far right, I'm excluding the far left because they're not in this category, but the left to the far right in Israel, what unifies them all is security concerns. So Israelis won't concede that Israel's an apartheid state, but they'd rather be an apartheid state than not be a state at all, right? They'd rather commit genocide than have genocide committed against them. Any bad thing you want to say about Israel is preferred to Israel being destroyed, and in turn, Israeli citizens, Jews being killed. That's generally how it's looked at.
But why? And I'm sorry, I don't see other hands. If you allow me to,
Yeah.
you can ask me. Thank you. So why do you think it's either or? First of all, like you said multiple things that I don't agree with, but I would take it that you're not defending the position. You're just speaking as if an Israeli would speak, a normal average Israeli would speak.
Oh yeah,
I believe that's what you think.
100%.
Yes.
Let me make that clear. Everything I'm saying now, at least in the questions you're asking me, I'm explaining the Israeli perspective, not my opinion on things.
Yes, that's fine. I got that point. So, why to them, they need to go to an either or extreme? So it's either we commit a genocide or other people are going to commit a genocide against us. Why isn't there like a vision where, okay, I demand of my state to define its borders because others are seeing the state as ever expanding, forever will expand. So define your border and contain yourself within those borders. Ensure that your citizens are given the rights, protect them, but please do not go beyond that. Let's not act, and let's not allow anybody to act upon us.
So I think that you're actually describing pretty well the position of the Israeli left. I think that's generally how they look at it. Just the left in Israel is, become smaller and smaller with the years, and it's a result of Israelis losing hope because of multiple failed peace agreements. So the left has been shrinking, but that I think is the definition of the left, or the position of the left. But what you said is a perspective that is coherent and sensible. But if you grow up in a society that teaches you to view things differently, what you're saying does not seem nearly as sensible. So there's definitely an indoctrination problem, and the Overton window in Israeli society is very narrow in terms of not on domestic issues, but on Israel-Palestine issues. There's not a broad landscape of different ideas that are constantly debated. But yeah, so I hope that answers your question. We do have somebody with the name Israeli Squirtle, so maybe they're an Israeli who has a different perspective. So I apologize that I don't remember how to pronounce your name. You'll need to remind me a few more times.
Spider.
Is by
That's okay.
where are you from, if you don't mind me asking? Unless you don't want to drop space.
It's fine. I'm originally from Yemen, but I don't live in the Middle East anymore.
Okay. Okay. Well, I'm glad Twitter recommended you this space. Good to connect with you, and you're welcome to stick around. And Israeli Squirtle, feel free to chime in on whatever you'd like.
Okay, hello. I have two questions for you, Adar.
Sure.
I actually know you from a few years ago. I used to watch some of Rudy Roshman videos, and one of the videos, he was in your channel, Sulha.
Yeah.
And that's how I get to know your channel and also your Discord server. And we actually know each other for a few years, of course, not in real life, but from Discord.
Oh, okay. What's your Discord username?
Adias Maccabeas.
Oh,
that was also my name here. I got suspended. Do you remember me?
Yeah, I know. Okay.
So
yes.
First of all, thank you. First of all, I would like to thank you because of you, I get to know one Palestinian friend. She lives in the UK, and we are actually meeting even now during this war, which I thought it would be impossible, but we got through this. But I have two questions for you. One is because I saw you in recent days. I saw your posts and I saw your interviews with Kim Iversen, which I also know from this time before the war.
Yeah.
And I would like to say you mentioned the far left, and I never categorized you as far left when you were in Sulha. But do you think that you've been radicalized in the last 2 years? Because that's what I feel from you. That's question number one. Question number two, I saw a video of you with, I think it was a Palestinian Christian in West Bank, a Palestinian woman.
Alice, yeah.
With more Alice. And I see that you getting some dialogue with settlers. So my question will be, what did you try to achieve there? And if you can elaborate, because
sure,
it was interesting.
Sure. So glad to reconnect after all this time. And yeah, to answer your first question, first of all, I don't consider myself far left, not then and not now. The framework in which I view things is one of universal humanism. That's the idea that human rights are worth protecting, or humanity is worth protecting. And the way to do that is through having a strong idea and system of human rights. So I've been much more outspoken against the atrocities and the human rights violations my government's committing, but that's because the amount of human rights violations has significantly increased. So a lot of people, you're not the first person to ask me this, people do think that I've been radicalized, but I just think I'm responding to a new situation on the ground. Where in my early days doing activism, I was more so mediating conversations, doing more middle ground stuff. But when we have a situation where children are being blown up every day in airstrikes, I felt a very strong moral obligation to speak out more and speak loudly. And my decision to do that is perceived by others as me being radicalized, but I don't think I have been radicalized, actually. One area where maybe I think I'm better informed now about, I've done a lot more research into Hamas and Israel and misinformation and stuff like that, but I don't think my views have fundamentally changed. To answer your second,
So do you consider yourself as a Zionist, or no?
I don't identify as a Zionist, but I don't identify as an anti-Zionist either. I identify as a non-Zionist. I mean, we could get into, first of all, I just think it's a dumb term. I don't think it's needed. If Zionism just means the right for Jewish self-determination, that doesn't require special terminology. The same way if I support Palestinian self-determination, what does that make me? A Pionist? Like, there's no word for that. You don't need a word for believing in a people's self-determination. So first of all,
you can be a pro-Palestinian.
Okay, so I'm pro-Israeli and Palestinian people. I support the self-determination of both people. Now, self-determination can manifest in many ways. I don't support a form of self-determination where one people are then oppressing another. I don't support Palestinians doing that. I don't support Jews doing that to Palestinians, right? So I support both people's self-determination, but not everything in the name of self-determination is then legitimate. And currently, Zionism is not just Jewish self-determination, it's Jewish self-determination in a very specific way, a way that is oppressive, a way that is unjust, and I don't identify with that. But the reason I don't say I'm an anti-Zionist is because I don't think the state of Israel needs to be dismantled for there to be a just solution. I could support 2 states, I could support 1 state, federation, confederation. For me, what matters is that the rights of the people are protected. So what institutions do we need to build to protect the rights of the people? We could have shared institutions that protect our rights. That would look more like 1 state. I do think a federation is the best form of that. Or we decide to have separate institutions, which would be 2 states. So I could get behind both visions, but yeah, that's how I look at it, and that's why I don't identify as either. Should I go to your next question, Squirtle, or
Yeah.
you have okay?
Yeah, I would like to.
So you're talking about a video I uploaded. So there's been 2 parts to this series, let's say, and then there's part 3 that I'm going to upload tomorrow. 2 months ago, I was at a Palestinian-Israeli camping trip in the West Bank. 200 Palestinians and Israelis showed up. It was great, inspiring, meaningful. We need more of that. But while we were there, one of the organizers, Alice Kisia, noticed that some settlers had broke onto her property and were taking stuff. Now, these were not random people. She's had some feud with these guys for many months now. So a few of us went to confront them. And then this might be the video you saw. I live streamed this, but we live streamed the interaction. And the IDF came and the police came, and eventually they just asked the settlers to put the stuff back and leave. I don't know what would have happened if it was just Alice there and the settlers. Like, this was a Jew on Jew situation, so I think the dynamic was a little bit different. But after that whole incident, and you could see in the live stream, I was talking to them generally respectfully, talking to the IDF. It wasn't we weren't fighting. We were just, well, we were fighting, but not in an aggressive way.
So wait, the motivation was to protect Alice or to create dialogue with the other side, with the Jews?
Well, I didn't have much context. I just knew Alice, a friend of mine, said that there's people stealing from her land. I responded to that. And then when I'm already confronting who I see as thieves, I don't need to, I still think the way to deal with thieves or bad people is actually through dialogue, because you're not born that way. Something in your life happened to convince you to view the world the way you view it. And I think more often than not, there's a way through dialogue to de-escalate and de-radicalize. So that's generally the approach I take. Force and violence, sure, in some instances it very well may be needed, but it should always be seen as the absolute last resort. And I don't see any reason to escalate tension through aggression and by raising my voice. So that's generally just my approach. Just, approach it in a calm, respectful way, speak to them. A few days after this incident, Alice reached out to me telling me she wants to stop feuding with these settlers and wants to build better ties with them, which I thought was amazing. And I said, let's do it. So she organized the call with, I think, 6 of us who were going to see how we could do more to build ties between both sides. And Alice started telling us who's behind sending these settlers to do all this stuff. And she dropped a name, this Lior Tal. I recognized that name. Turns out it's a friend of mine from my days in the IDF. He used to be a good friend of mine who I hadn't spoken to in like 15 years. So right after my call with Alice and the crew, I called Lior after 15 years and he answered. And I said, I didn't say anything about Alice. I just said, I want to come visit you. I've been spending more time in the West Bank. I want to visit you. He said, sure, come on by. And then a few weeks ago, I went to visit him. And then when I saw him, I told him that I happen to be friends with Alice, which surprised him because I think it's unusual for Jews and Palestinians to be friends, especially if you come from the world he is living in. And then he told me his side of the story, which really points to a very deep systemic issue, because it's not as simple as him just sending people to her land to steal. He's renting that land from Himenuta, which is a subsidiary of the JNF, the Jewish National Fund. I don't understand the legal process, how they got rights to the land. It's currently in the courts. They're trying to resolve it in the courts. But as far as he's concerned, he's just paying rent and trying to work the land to provide for his family. From Alice's perspective, this is land her family's lived on for generations, and now she's being asked to leave. And this is a grievance Palestinians have had for a century now, where they're removed from land they've lived on for generations. And more often than not, the people who replace them are Jews who are following the law of the land they live in. So there wasn't, when I spoke to Lior, and I'm not just saying this because he's my friend, I could have walked away from this feeling very differently, but I saw that he's sincere. He's not approaching this maliciously. He genuinely believes that he's just following the law, doing what's right to be able to work land, but the old tenants refuse to vacate. So there's really a systemic issue that's pitting neighbors against each other, systemic issue that, benefits one people over another. But in a completely different context, Alice and Lior should be friends and be working together. Now, on the bright side, he is open to meeting with her and seeing how they can improve their ties and all that. So we're going to try to build better ties between them, even though the courts ultimately will need to decide what happens here.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and glad you joined us, Adias. Feel free to stick around. We have, I see we have 2 hand raises. We're going to give it to Chillery, and then we'll give it back to Esbitter, and then we're going to give it to Dare. Excuse my pronunciation, friends. But we're then going to bring it over to Dare and then Falaha. And then after that, we're actually going to wrap this up and move it over to Discord. We do this every Tuesday, but we do half here on Twitter and then the other half on Discord. So whoever wants to join, you're welcome to come over to Discord afterwards as well. We have an awesome community there who are actually happen to be listening in on this as well right now. But yeah, and with that, Chillery, what's up?
Yeah, so I mean, I kind of wanted to say, a couple things. Just responding to like the earlier points and whatnot. I mean, I guess Mikey left already, but yeah, like to deny the stopping of aid into Gaza as like propaganda created by terrorists is just like nonsense. Even if the argument is that Hamas controls and funnels aid into its upper ranks, Hamas doesn't control the flotillas, right? Flotillas are international aid workers slash unaffiliated bipartisans that have no connection to Hamas whatsoever. Yet we know that out of the dozens of flotillas, many of them have been arrested by Israel and convicted of essentially no crimes whatsoever. Currently, right now, as of October 11th, so a couple days ago, one of the recent flotillas that was, arrested and detained, actually contained an Israeli dissident himself. The three people were Hoaida Araf, who's Palestinian, Zorhan Regev, who's German Israeli, and Omer Sharir, who's also an Israeli. And they're currently imprisoned in Ashkelon. They're Israeli dissidents who denounced Israeli citizenship a while ago. But, they. Were part of the flotillas that just got arrested a couple days ago, and they've been detained ever since. Um, Around, I believe, 89 of the 145 participants of the different flotillas have been arrested slash detained or in indefinite detention. Right. These are all like people completely unaffiliated with Hamas trying to get humanitarian aid and health supplies into Gaza. But yeah, if the argument is like, oh, Hamas is controlling the aid distribution, then why is Israel going around arresting people who are part of flotillas, right? Um, the other thing as well is that we know that Israel has a history of bombing aid workers on pretty much no basis whatsoever. Back in April of last year, you had the bombing of the World Central Kitchen. So the World Central Kitchen had coordinated convoy movements with the IDF almost 2 months prior to them actually coming into Gaza, and then literally as they were driving around, they get bombed, right? And Benjamin Netanyahu was like, "Oh, this was like an unintended strike. We don't know how it happened." Blah blah blah. Bellingcat, which is a really good independent journalist site, they did a deep dive analysis on the missile that was used, and it's a targeted missile, right? Like it's very difficult to have like an accidental strike of a targeted missile that also only Israel has access to. Lebanon, Egypt, and Hamas don't have access to the specific missile that was used to bomb World Central Kitchen. And so that it ended up killing 10 of the aid workers and obviously destroying all the aid supplies. And so this isn't even the first time that Israel just like blatantly goes around killing international aid workers who have no affiliation whatsoever with Hamas, right? Or any governmental authority in Palestine. The next thing that I wanted to say was, you know, the idea of like the Israeli left. So, frankly speaking, um, I would argue the Israeli left doesn't exist. And the reason for this is because, I mean, I would classify myself as a leftist, but the leftist movements within Palestine, occupied 48 territories of occupied Palestine, who have had Israelis in them, made it very clear that the notion of liberation relies on the complete abolition of the Israeli state. So a good example is Uri Gordon. So Uri Gordon, he's a very popular. Anarchist from Israel. He denounced Israeli citizenship, so he's no longer residing in Israel. Obviously, he lives in the U.S. now. But while he was still in Israel, he would be part of this group called Anarchists Against the Wall, and they were an anarcho-communist group in Israel that organized with a lot of the Palestinian resistance movements, both in West Bank and Gaza. And they made it very clear that the Israeli left, who are part of the Knesset and things like that, their rhetoric is really no different than the rest of the Knesset. And what I mean by this is it still positions itself on the idea that Israeli occupation is justified. We just need to be better occupiers. Right? The debate between the Israeli left and the Israeli right is not what is wrong with settler colonialism. The debate is how do we be better or worse settler colonists. Most of the ones in the Knesset argue like, oh, we need to stop the bombing, or we need to make sure that there's humanitarian aid that goes into Gaza, which is great. But the actual fundamental conversation of how do we decolonize the territory for indigenous land back is not something that the Israeli left within the Knesset is concerned about, right? One of the early pamphlets that Uri Gordon helped to publish back in 2004 from the Anarchist Communist Initiative states this. So, a really a quick, short paragraph. We do not need to promote a political program, be that in the Geneva Accords or some alternative. Instead, we must put the demand for an entirely different way of life and equity for all inhabitants of the region. We must recognize that a revolutionary change based on the abolition of class oppression, exploitation, and the aims of building a true society, a communistic one, relies relies on the complete abolition of settler colonialism and the oppression of dispossessed Palestinians. This relies on the complete abolition of the Israeli state and the machinery of the Israeli state, a society in which there will be no state coercion, where organized violence by the IDF will be completely abolished, and settler colonialism of Israeli settlers will also be abolished and inexistent, where all other evils of capitalism will be completely removed, right? This like notion of the quote unquote Israeli left, which I mean, he doesn't even refer to himself as Israeli anymore, um, is kind of what I would refer to as actual people in occupied Palestine pushing for revolutionary change. Leftists in the Knesset, whatever they want to call themselves, I don't necessarily believe actually try to deal with the fundamental problems of settler colonialism and occupation, because they still rely on the existence of the Israeli state.
Oh yeah, I mean that's for certain. There's no, I mean you do have anti-Zionist parties, but the Israeli left, by and large, are not anti-Zionist. They're what would be described as liberal Zionists. So they're not working for the dismantling of the state. They're more interested in ending the occupation of the West Bank and establishing two states. But the views that you expressed, you will find amongst Palestinian citizens of Israel and the far left of Israeli Jews, but it's a very small group. Is it small and growing? Hard to say, but they don't have all too much political relevance. And by
Yeah, there's like,
not all too
oh,
much,
sorry.
I mean close to none.
Yeah, no, I just want to say really quickly. I mean, I don't know if it's growing or not. I mean, I know that there's a lot of military resistors who like refuse to join, the IDF and things like that. But there is a one group I know is pretty popular. They call themselves Radical Haifa. So they're like a collection of, activists, anarchists and communists and things like that. So the Israel Communist Party, which was the original leftist party in Israel, has been criticized by most like anti-capitalists as becoming reformist, because recently the Israeli Communist Party has shifted from anti-Zionism to non-Zionism, and so they kind of criticized that. Radical Haifa was a collection of former Israeli Communist Party members who kind of left Marxist Leninism and adopted anarcho communism, and they've been pretty active, in Haifa and other areas of occupied Palestine, and also in West Bank. But yeah, I don't know if it's growing or not. I just know about that one group, and they're relatively small. So yeah.
Thank you. No, you're not getting better, but it's okay. Uh, it's so actually, my name is Alia. Everybody knows it's similar to Alia, the irony. But so okay, that's good. Um, I raised my hand while you were speaking to Adi, whom I know for a long time. And he asked you a question whether you would identify as a Zionist or not. And you said it's not that important. And I think ignoring, because like while listening to you initially when you started the space, you said that the Palestinian Israeli issue is kind of unique, but these type of conflicts are not unique, or they happen a lot of times in throughout human history, which is right. But by ignoring Zionism specifically, you're ignoring the uniqueness of that case of Israel and Palestine. It functions kind of as a rhetoric that would or let's say neutralize any critique to Zionism, because it's not self-determination. It's not just mere self-determination, because every single, or let's say all of human groups are granted or argued the right to self-determination. It's kind of like an inherent right that you get as a human being. But then we have this specific case of Zionism that was a political movement. It was a project during a specific time that said, hey, no, while everybody has the right of self-determination, I'm concerned with Jewish self-determination, and how can we achieve that in the land of Zion. And it came at a cost. It had a consequences on the Palestinians, which was them being kicked out. Today, it's practiced in a way where it grants somebody who has never been to the land a right to move to the land, while those who were born there today, and I'm not talking about 48, today they would be kicked out of the land. So I think that it is a bit unfair to say, oh no, it's just another case of self-determination. I think that you really need to get to the core of the quote unquote conflict, for the lack of a better word, which is Zionism. What is it? And what does it imply, which is a Jewish supremacy? And how is it implemented today? And what problems does it create today? I think that you shouldn't ignore it, to be honest.
I hear that. And, it's interesting that it seems that anti-Zionists push back more on the idea. When I say that I reject the term, the pushback I get is not from Zionists, it's from anti-Zionists, interestingly. But I don't think...
Can I please interrupt you for once? And I'm sorry for interrupting you. I've heard a lot of Israelis that struggle with this term, Zionism. They would say that they're Zionists. They would say that they're anti-Zionists. They would even say a new term that I've learned recently in the 2 years. They would call themselves post-Zionists. They would say that, there was a need for Zionism at some point. We did some mistakes in the past, but now that we're safe, we're no longer Zionists. We need to move to an era that is post the Zionist movement. So I feel that also part of why you need to focus on Zionism and not ignore it and neutralize it is the fact that it is a core identity of what is an Israeli.
Well, so yeah, let me just expand on this, because I think that the getting stuck on the term Zionism actually makes it harder for us to have conversations about what's important. Because when Zionists use the term Zionism, they're not describing the political movement that established a Jewish homeland in British Mandate Palestine. Like that's not what they're describing when they say Zionism. What they mean is actually Jewish self-determination. What Palestinians and anti-Zionists are talking about when they say Zionism, they're not talking about Zionism in theory. They're talking about its practical implications. What has this self-determination meant for us? I think that because the definitions are actually quite different, if we have very different definitions of the same term, sticking with the term only gets us to a situation where we understand each other less, or where we're then debating over the meaning of terminology. I would rather cut straight to the chase and describe it this way. Currently, Jewish self-determination is inherently oppressive. This is unacceptable. This needs to change. There's no debate on terminology. There's no misunderstanding about what's meant. It's just you're being very clear about what you mean. So I actually think this is a much clearer way to cut through the bullshit and have conversations about what's important. Secondly, the term Zionism in Hebrew is not used in the same way. There's this whole I'm a proud Zionist. You don't really hear that in Israeli society. That's a diaspora thing. In Israel, Zionist just means a patriot. It's indistinguishable from saying I'm patriotic. That's essentially what it means in Hebrew. So you don't have in Israeli society saying I'm a proud Zionist. That just doesn't exist. That's just American Zionists and European Zionists that are doing that. And again, I don't reject people using the term. I just think it's counterproductive personally.
I still disagree with you, but it's okay if you want to move on.
Well, that's why we're here, for some open dialogue. So healthy disagreement. We do need to move through this next part quickly. Those on Discord, thank you for your patience. We will just, I imagine, 5 minutes. I just want to give 2 last speakers the opportunity. With that, we're going to give it over to Der Robber. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Anyways, welcome.
It's fine. Thank you. Hi. Um, I'm gonna try to make this quick. So I also just stumbled into this space, and I've never heard of you before, but I've been listening, and you mentioned before that you like your family's has very different beliefs to your own, and so I imagine that you were raised with different beliefs than the ones you're holding now. And if you don't mind, I would be super interested to hear a bit about how how you kind of came to the beliefs that you hold today, because I think that's pretty impressive to change your mind and be so open about that.
Sure, yeah. So welcome to the space. Great to connect, and happy to answer your question. You're definitely correct that I was not raised with the views I have today. I was raised with very deep Zionist teachings. Israeli father, American mother, but both staunch Zionists. In fact, my dad's 9th generation living on the land. My family moved from Vilna, Lithuania to Hebron in 1812. So it really runs deep. And like we precede Herzl Zionism by 60 somewhat years. But anyway, so I was never taught to hate Palestinians. I was simply taught that this is our land. We need to protect ourselves against them. If we don't protect ourselves, then they're going to kill us. I wasn't taught to hate. Simply, they're our enemy and we need to defend ourselves. My dad also put in my head from a very young age that to be a good Israeli and a good Jew, I need to join the IDF when I turn 18. I grew up in New Jersey. I lived in Israel for a few years, but for most of my childhood, I was in New Jersey. But from a young age, my dad put in my head that joining the IDF is the thing that I should do. So when I turned 18, sure enough, I made Aliyah, joined the IDF. And then interestingly, it was my time in the IDF where I started to have a little bit of a shift. Interestingly, not even from serving in the West Bank and being, radicalized by what I saw there. It was simply guarding on base and looking at there was a poster of Hamas training techniques on the wall. And, we're a bunch of 18, 19, 20-year-olds. We're bored out of our mind. So I was looking at this poster and there was a Hamas soldier crawling through sand. And I was crawling in sand that very same day. And I looked at him at the face of my sworn enemy and saw myself. And I said, wait a minute. If I was born in Gaza, could that be me? Does his family view him as a hero and me as a terrorist? Can that be? Now, these questions that arose didn't change my mind overnight. It's very hard to change your mind when you're in such a system like the IDF, and deep-rooted teachings take a while to change, but it definitely planted a seed. And then in the years after my release, the seed that was planted on that day when I was looking at the poster on the wall and saw myself and my enemy started just expanding my curiosity, and I started to meet Palestinians and speak to them. And then I understood that, what I was taught is very different from reality. And it wasn't even that I was raised on a lie. I was just raised on, let's call it half the truth with a very large and important omission of the full reality. I don't even think it's intentional. My parents didn't even know the full truth until I came back to them and tried to convince them of it. So that was really the process. It was just a moment in the IDF, and then years after the IDF when I was out of that system and got to live life a little bit, and my mind expanded from experiences and whatnot. And I just understood that the path to peace is paved through the humanization of the other. And we need to work on, we just need to work on finding a just solution for all people. That's a little bit about my transformation.
Thank you so much. That's very, very interesting.
Yeah. And just for the
so cool that you kept an open mind and stay curious. And yeah, thanks.
For sure. And I'm glad you joined us today. And just for the record, I have been able to convince my mom. So my mom sees the world as I do in relation to Israel-Palestine for the most part. My father, brother, and extended family, not so much. I mean, most of my family are settlers, right? I'm not just like I don't just come from a Jewish family or just an Israeli family. No, I come from a hardcore settler family. They accept me. They think I'm naive, but we have pretty productive conversations nonetheless.
For the record, I think you're naive too, Adar.
What's that?
I say for the record, I believe you are naive as well.
Yeah.
But I always told you.
Yeah. That's the the perception of views similar to my own in Israeli society is naive. But that's anybody trying to change the status quo in a way that's revolutionary is going to be perceived as naive. You know who else was perceived as naive? Herzl, thinking he could come reestablish a homeland after 2,000 years, thinking he could move these Jews back in and succeed. Oh, he succeeded. Well, to some extent.
You're right.
But naive people change the world. Now, I don't think I'm here to change the world. That's not. I don't have this activist perception that I'm the one to do it. No, we just all need to do our small part. So I'm gonna just keep contributing what I can to positive change.
No, I totally agree with you. Naive people, usually those are the ones who change the world, but I don't think all naive people change the world. And it's only small.
Wait, and let me build on that. Not all naive people change the world, and some naive people change the world for the worse. So you don't know what direction this is going to go. But that saying, I mean, let me defend my position. My worldview is one of universal humanism, where humanity deserves to be protected, and we need to focus on how we can elevate human collective well-being. And one of the ways to do that is to just protect human rights. So I don't come from a traditional left-wing worldview. I approach this from one of universal humanism, which often lands me on the left side of the political spectrum, but I guess not always. All right, we need to wrap this up, but I did say we will give an opportunity. Oh, they're gone. Okay, so here's what's going to happen next. Part 2 is going to happen on Discord. We have an awesome community there. Israelis, Palestinians, voices from around the world. We do conversations 4 or 5 days a week, both voice and text. You don't need to speak. You could just listen if you want to join. But if you want to join that, find a link. You can find a link to that in my bio. If you're watching this on the YouTube stream, it's in the description of this video. I'll also drop one in chat. And if you are not going to follow us over to Discord, that's fine too. We do this every single Tuesday at 7 p.m. Jerusalem time. That's noon EST. So if you don't move over to Discord, I will see you all next week. Signing off and sending you all much love from the Western Galilee and the beautiful land of Israel and Palestine. Until next time, friends. Okay. Cool. I dropped the link. I didn't give people instructions for how to join. Fuck. Oh, hopefully they find it. All right, what do we want to do here? We want to stop share. Cool. Do we end the stream? I think we should end the stream, right? It's the only way to make this Discord session more exclusive. Let me just give 3 more minutes to Q&A here because I saw some things. All right, Arimov, you gotta relax. Kahanis coming here swinging. How about come and listen, chat, try to make a friend? Just sitting behind your computer, bored, lashing out against people you don't know because something in your life's frustrating you. Come on, bro, you're better than that. So one thing I do want to address is I saw there were some comments from Nab Hill and Floodland about me explaining the dynamic between Alice and Lior. So imagination scene. You go, what I said doesn't explain stealing and aggressive behavior from people there. So for sure, what I was explaining was the dynamic between Lior and Alice. The theft is them removing things from land that he's currently paying rent for that land that Alice has been living on. So he just views it as clearing off land so he could farm it. But it's true that there is a lot of malicious and intentionally harmful behavior in the West Bank. I was just speaking about that isolated incident. Nab Hill says, under international law, the West Bank is occupied territory. The JNF has no right over it. So yeah, I think certainly from international law, it's just getting Israelis to think that international law matters more than Israeli law is an uphill battle. Why do they care about international law, right? Israelis don't respect international law. They'll respect the law of their country more so. So I was simply explaining the perspective and how, this is a guy that wakes up in the morning, has 7 children, wants to feed his family, works the land. He's not coming from this from a hateful place. Yeah, he's indoctrinated. Yeah, he's radical in many ways, but nothing about our conversation was hateful. He said, and I always tell my guys when they're interacting with Palestinians, never use any force. We're against violence. And interestingly, he was less extreme than the young people that work under him, because I don't want to get into the details. I want to start this open dialogue session on Discord, but I was explaining the dynamic between Lior and Alice, but there's many more challenging and malicious dynamics you're going to see in the West Bank. Anyways, signing off on YouTube as well. I'll be back in the next few days for another stream. Much love, friends. Until next time.